Stretch far and wide after Saudi Arabia led a Gulf states recall of ambassadors to Qatar last week. Riyadh then going one further on Friday by branding the Doha-backed Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization. It's part of a long-standing rivalry over who holds sway in places like Egypt, where the king was quick to offer billions after last year's overthrow of the Brotherhood-backed government. But why now? And why has Riyadh also decided to distance itself from the Islamists fighting in Syria, ordering home all Saudi subjects within 2 weeks and branding as terrorists in the same decree the Nusra Front and Isis, a group which operates in both Syria and Iraq? That clean break leaves Baghdad unmoved. In an interview with France24, Iraq's Shiite Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki bluntly accusing both Saudi Arabia and Qatar of directly backing the Sunni uprising in Anbar province. Finally, as the Saudis fret over a possible détente between the West and Shiite Iran, the U.S. president's preparing to visit Saudi Arabia later this month. We'll see what that visit, whether that visit will soothe Saudi jitters. Today, in the France24 debate, we're looking at Saudi Arabia upping the tone, and with us to talk about it from Abu Dhabi, Faisal Al Yafai, chief columnist at daily newspaper The National. Thank you for joining us. Also with us, longtime Syrian dissident Haytham Manna, president of the Scandinavian Institute for Human Rights. Welcome back, sir. Welcome as well to Olivier, whose books include 30 Years That Rocked the Persian Gulf. He is with sister station Radio France International. And also joining us, analyst and legal counsel Ardavan, Amir, Aslani. Welcome back. The France24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and on Twitter, our hashtag F24debate. The recall of ambassadors was last Wednesday, but it's, as we say in newsroom parlance, a story with legs. Faisal, we're getting news that there are longtime Emirati sports reporters at Al Jazeera Sports Network who've tendered their resignation. Al Jazeera say they were pressured. We're also hearing similar noises elsewhere. What have you heard from where you are in Abu Dhabi?
Well, I think the stuff about the media and Al Jazeera and the sports channels and stuff, I think this is really something that's happening on the sidelines. The real question is about this disagreement between Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Qatar. I mean, I wouldn't overstate it. It is a very serious thing. The recall of these ambassadors is unprecedented, but it doesn't mean that they have fallen out of love with each other. These are countries, after all, that remain in a political union in the GCC and in a military union through Peninsula Shield. So, and there are, of course, these long-standing ties of family and business and so forth. So I think the right way to categorize it is to say that this is something almost an interfamilial conflict. But it is serious, it is unprecedented, and I think, as you say, it is something that's going to run for a little while longer until they can solve it diplomatically.
You're saying that make it sound almost like a family feud, but nonetheless, branding the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization, that's a pretty clear signal to Doha.
Yes, I mean, it's not something that the Saudis are doing out of nowhere. I mean, it is a mood in the Arab world that has shifted against the Brotherhood. You've seen, of course, millions of people on the streets demonstrating for the removal of Mohamed Morsi last summer. You saw similar protests on a smaller scale in Tunisia that led to the removal or the change in government, which took al-Nahda out of their pivotal role in the General Assembly. So it's a part of a mood that's happening across the entire region at this moment. And I think the Saudis are reacting to that. Within the GCC, there's definitely a feeling of frustration with the Qataris, a sense that perhaps the Qataris haven't grasped quite how dangerous the Gulf states see the Muslim Brotherhood as.
Olivier?
Well, there are many questions, no? Muslim Brotherhood is all what Saudi Arabia despises. First of all, they're horizontal organization, whereas monarchs want to rule from the top. They mobilize people in the name of Islam, which is supposed to be the prerogative of those Muslim leaders. And they're seen like a Freemasonry within the peninsula. So when you see that one of them is supporting the Muslim Brotherhood, all the neighbors really fret about it.
One of them supporting it, but Ardavan, Amir, Aslani, it's a bit of an overstretch to label that organization as a terrorist organization.
You know, Faisal pointed out to the notion that there's a change of mood in the Middle East. I don't think there's a change of mood at grassroots level. I think there's a change of mood at the royal family's level. What happened in Egypt is a coup d'etat that brought into power the old Egyptian military attaché in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, with the assistance of billions of dollars of Saudi financing for the post-coup government to be able to maintain stability. I'm not certain that the Muslim Brotherhood has been forgotten and the entire Islamic population in the Middle East has turned over them. As a matter of fact, the exact contrary is true. That's why all these Persian Gulf Arab countries are freaking out at the sight of the Muslim Brotherhood. That's why they're pointing fingers at Qatar. Muslim Brotherhood is a grassroots political advocacy group which preaches something that the sheikdoms in the Persian Gulf don't like, that is Islamic rule, which basically means if the Muslim Brotherhood were to prevail anywhere in that part of the world, it's the end of the royal families. And what you're witnessing over here, aside from this chasm between these Gulf monarchies, is basically two different groups supporting and defending two different versions of Islam. On the one side, you've got Qatar and the Muslim Brotherhood, and on the other, you've got the Saudis and the Emiratis who are defending other versions of radical Islam, the Takfir Wahhabi movement that is omnipresent in Syria. So it is not, secular democratic people pointing fingers at a terrorist organization called the Muslim Brotherhood. It's one radical version of Islam against another. And all this within an environment, with an atmosphere that is witnessing the return of Iran into the international community. The visit of Mrs. Ashton today is testimony to that. And the unique interview that you realized yesterday, 2 days ago, with the Iraqi Prime Minister also demonstrates that this rift goes beyond the Sunni-Sunni concept and also entails the rise of Shia Iran and the new distribution of power in the Middle East.
Haytham, Manna, when you're speaking with fellow Syrians, how much does theology play into it, I guess is the question.
Before arriving to Syria, we can speak about a structural problem between Saudi Arabia and Qatar, essentially. Saudi Arabia now is the old-fashioned family with some minister for more than my age in power, and it's not really adapted with many questions of our time. They tried to open in the Syrian question with Bandar bin Sultan, but Bandar failed. On the other side, Qatar, you have the Tamim and the heritage of his father, the father Amir, what we call Amir al-Ab. The heritage of the father is Qaradawi and Council of Muslim Ulema.
All right, let's explain that. Yusuf al-Qaradawi, who's a preacher who is on Al Jazeera.
He is also the Mufti of Qatar.
And he's
officially is
very popular, and he annoys the Saudis a lot because he...
And he is, at the same time, one of the financial and propaganda and ideological aid of Muslim Brotherhood.
All right, let me ask on this. Olivier Delage, there was back in November this meeting that took place between the King of Saudi Arabia, the Emir of Qatar. The new Emir, who's 33 years old, said he would tone things down. But here we are, and 2 weeks ago we heard some very harsh criticism of both Abu Dhabi and of Riyadh from Yusuf al-Qaradawi on Al Jazeera.
Yes, because the UAE and Bahrain and Saudi Arabia are just exasperated by Qatar, and they press even more. And I think this is a strategic mistake, because the new Emir wanted to keep things quiet. And now he has no choice but to follow the path of his father. And, okay, they have withdrawn 3 ambassadors. Kuwait, Oman have not. Now, what do we do? After a few weeks, a few months, do we send them back? Do we break the diplomatic relations? Now, they talk about severing the links between Qatar and Saudi Arabia on on the coast, well, on the earth side of Qatar, they can do it. Now, if they do it with the sea, that's another story. There is an American base on Qatar. So
and
the whole thing, military base.
Yeah.
Now, I think the exasperation lacks of a profound, a strategic sight of what's going to happen in the next few months.
Right, so the exasperation is not backed up by a plan, is what you're saying at this particular point.
That we'll find out in a few months, but I doubt it.
All right, a comment from one of the viewers. Please look up the ideologies that Qatar supports and follows. It has nothing to do with the Brotherhood. Ardavan, you agree with Olivier, the Gulf Cooperation Council proving it's divided over this?
No, I think he's perfectly right. But at the same time, I'm also in full agreement with what Faisal said. These are all similar institutions fighting against each other. It is a family feud. You're dealing with, medieval-style feudal monarchies with absolute powers, without any presence of any democratic value in any of these Persian Gulf Arab states. None of them. So they are in a fight today and a rift because they believe that Qatar does not seem to understand the dangers that in their mind the Muslim Brotherhood personifies. I insist upon this. The Muslim Brotherhood, it was specified as a grassroots organization that is hugely popular in these states. If it were not, if it were an insignificant entity, it wouldn't have led to this road that we're witnessing today. But they're compelled to reach an agreement because at the end of the day, they are fighting for their own survival. Because what they're fighting for against today are two things. The return of Iran, which we need to insist upon, and that's why everybody's freaking in town today. And number two, the fact that there is an alternative political option that is popping up in all of these countries, replacing monarchies by a theocracy ruled by a Muslim Brotherhood structure institution. That's what makes it
disagreeing with you is Carla on Twitter. She's says
got the right.
The Saudis denouncing the Muslim Brotherhood is political and not for the purposes of defeating terrorism. She is underwhelmed by the threat there. Haytham, Manna.
You know the problem, I like to continue my idea. The problem in Qatar, the most important movement, as political movement in Qatar is Salafit. It's not Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood, you have about 7-10 persons. And all Muslim Brotherhood in Qatar are foreigners. That means there's no problem. In a moment, we can put them out. In Saudi Arabia, it's different. Muslim Brotherhood movement still in Saudi Arabia for more than 30 years as the bastion, as really Muhammad Qutb, all the leaders of Muslim Brotherhoods, which were not in prison in Egypt, were in Saudi Arabia. And for that, they have a network, a great network in the country. It's not the same thing. And if we look to that, in Emirates, they try to do something, and they have an organization. They are more important than Salafist movement in Emirates. For that, they must stop this movement because Dubai, for example, cannot live with such kind of organization. A commercial center without resource, local resource, and with living with a free trade. We cannot open for any political Islamic movement there to keep this prosperity, exceptional prosperity, which we live. And if you understand the situation, the economical one, it's not only the influence, for example, of Saudi Arabia or Qatar in Syria, because this influence, there is a conflict also. You know that Jarba and the coalition now is pro-Saudi.
I'm going to interrupt you there. Yes. We'll talk about Syria in a moment. But Faisal Al Yafai, a final thought on this.
Yes, I want to come back on something that Amir said, and I think Haytham picked up. Excuse me, Ardavan, I'm sorry. I'm happy to take fashion tips from you, as I said on Twitter, but I think I'll have to disagree with the politics. This talk about the Muslim Brotherhood is really talk about the Brotherhood from 2011. The Brotherhood went into power in Egypt, let's not forget, and they were voted out, not officially, but with millions and millions of people coming out onto the streets saying that they had had enough of this organization that tried to accrue as much power as it could to itself, that tried to change the constitution to make it more Islamic. The same thing happened in Libya, where the Islamists lost the election. The same thing happened in Tunisia. When you're talking about the Muslim Brotherhood being something grassroots, something that people want, they had elections, they won it. The second point is about the monarchies. Let's be clear that the Brotherhood have not supplanted any single monarchy during the Arab Spring. That is a fact that has not occurred. Now, let's look at monarchies where there are some Islamists, such as in Jordan, such as in Morocco. In both those cases, they have made accommodations with them. So this idea that the monarchies and the Brotherhood are fundamentally opposed to each other is a mistake. The truth of the matter is there has been a seismic shift in the Arab understanding of the Brotherhood. And the Saudis are not leading this. They are reacting to what is happening on the ground in the region.
Just on that, Faisal, before we go to the break, Qatar is tiny. We've talked about it's several 100,000 citizens, but strategically located, sharing territorial waters with Iran, all those reserves there. How strong is the bargaining position of Doha?
Well, like I say, I don't think it is right to characterize it as this furious disagreement where they're going to bargain on either side. The truth of the matter is they all want to come together. Part of the reason I think that we're seeing this public disagreement is because the Americans, as we'll talk about later, are coming soon. And I think as much as the Saudis will have a frosty reception for Barack Obama, they also want to be sure that they can present the GCC as a united front. And that is unlikely to happen unless they can bring Qatar into the fold and make it agree with the discussions that they've had for the last 3-4 months.
All right. And Barack Obama's upcoming visit before the end of the month to Saudi Arabia. We'll be talking about it again when we come back here on the France 24 debate. Stay with us. More to come.